If you're watching this video, chances are that you're a clinical research associate who's looking for tools and resources that will make your life easier. You came to the right place. There's two ways to assess the workload capacity of a clinical research associate, especially when it comes to monitoring visits. The first one is to how many protocols, how many clinical trials is the CRA assigned to. Maybe you're a CRA who's dedicated to one single sponsor. That doesn't mean that you will be assigned to only one clinical trial. It can be that you are monitoring 3, 4, 7, 10. It really depends on each team and each sponsor how many clinical trials you will be assigned to. Based on what, you might ask? Based on what's the frequency of your monitoring visits, what's the frequency of the patient visits, is it an observational trial, is it a phase 3 oncology trial that requires a lot of activities both from the patient, from the site, and you as the CRA. It might also be that you are assigned to observational clinical trials, which have a much less frequency of monitoring visits, and that gives you space and capacity to take on more clinical trials and perform those assessments and those site management activities from home or from the office. The second way to assess the workload of a clinical research associate is to know how many sites the CRA is monitoring. It could be that a CRA is monitoring one single clinical trial when that study is conducted in various and numerous clinical sites. For example, let's say that you are assigned to a clinical trial that is a phase 3 oncology study. That study is conducted in 17 different clinical sites among the country. If the monitoring plan for your study says that you need to perform monitoring visits for each site every 6 weeks and you have 17 sites, let's do the math. That's more than 10 monitoring visit days per month. It's a lot. It is very common for a clinical trial to generate many amendments, so versions of the documents, especially the essential documents. Sometimes you end up with a protocol amendment version 21, which means for 21 times, if they were approved by the regulatory authorities and ethics committees, you had to retrain your sites on those new versions, you had to make sure that they are filed, and these new versions, these modifications are being implemented. Imagine that with the 21 amendments of the protocol, you also get 21 versions amendments of the informed consent form, the document that the patients will sign when they enroll in the clinical trial, and if there's any new versions of the informed consent form, the document dedicated specifically to the patients will also need to reconsent with this new amendment. That new version of the informed consent form, for you, it means that you will have to train your site for the new version of the informed consent form. You will have to print it or make sure that the sites have it so that when the patient comes in at the first visit, the patient will sign this informed consent form. You'll also have to make sure that the medical records collect how the informed consent process for this new version was. And you'll also have to file this new version into your ETMF and in the ISF at site. And while some clinical trials will give you a lot of work in terms of new versions and new visits and new documents, some other clinical trials will give you almost no work at all. And in the same way, it works with sponsors. Some sponsors of the clinical trials will be very involved. They will want a lot of reports, a lot of tracking, a lot of information of what's going on at the sites. And you being the CRA who monitors the sites, you will be very involved with the sponsor. But other sponsors of clinical trials are very laid back. They completely trust you and they completely leave the operations and the conduct and the monitoring and management of the clinical trials to you. But having said that, the struggle and challenge for a clinical research associate is to keep track and to keep under control every single movement that happens in a clinical trial. Not only because the sponsor might ask you about the status of your sites, the sites that you are monitoring, or because the sites might ask you, how do we stand with that new amendment of the protocol that you told me ahead of time that it was coming, but also for you, for your own sake, to have control over what are your responsibilities and the status of your sites. And my preferred way to keep under control everything that's going on in my sites and in my studies is having a God's eye type of tracker. And I want to show you how I keep track of my sites. I like to keep one of these God's eye type of trackers for every study that I am monitoring. And the first tab in this tracker will tell me all the details I need to know about the sites that I am monitoring in this study. Now, this is a hypothetical site with hypothetical site staff that are participating in the study and hypothetical contacts. But you should have here every single site that you are assigned to. Who is the principal investigator, who are the sub-investigators, who's the study coordinator, the study nurse, and also if they have a preferred way of communicating, a preferred channel of communication, also have it here because then you'll know how they prefer to be contacted. The next thing I like to keep track of is my monitoring visits calendar. Not only how many monitoring visits I have performed, but also the monitoring visits that are coming up. I also like to keep a note column here in case I need to have a specific reminder for my monitoring visit that day or the next monitoring visit. Maybe I haven't seen the principal investigator for 3 consecutive monitoring visits and I want to make sure that at the next monitoring visit I will see my PI. Next, I like to keep track of my regulatory approvals, both ethics committees and regulatory authorities if you have that in your specific country. And just by looking at this tab, I know that there have been 2 versions of the protocol, there have been 2 versions of the investigator brochure, I have the dates when these were approved by both the regulatory authorities and the ethics committees, and I know where I am missing to file these documents, but I know that I'm missing in the ETMF version 1.1. Having this information so easily accessible to me makes quality checks much easier, because I will not be able to do full quality checks of the ISF or of the ETMF at every single monitoring visit. But at every monitoring visit, I can simply have a look at this tracker, at this file, and know what documents I need to bring with me on site or to make sure that they're in the ETMF. Next, I like to keep track of more granular information when it comes to my sites. For example, this is site 100. I know who my principal investigator are, when this person joined the study, if this person is still ongoing or if they discontinued the study. I like to make little notes on why they discontinued the study. And these notes are great because when I put together my monitoring visit report, I can simply look into the comments that I have in this file and add these comments into the report. At the same time, when it comes to that quality check, this file will also easily show me where I am missing documents. Maybe I'm missing a GCP certificate that is expired and I can see here that it's more than 3 years that this person has not had an update to the GCP. I can also see here that the principal investigator did not sign the FDA 1572, so easily I can keep track of what I need to do for the next monitoring visit. So instead of me wondering for the next monitoring visit which documents I should take with me so that the principal investigator signs them, I can easily go into this tracker, see where it's red, where it's pending, where it's missing a signature, and done. Next step is to go even more in depth. For this site, I also like to track my patients. I like to track all the patients that have been enrolled, when they have been enrolled, if they have signed the informed consent form, if they're discontinued the study or they're still ongoing. I like to make notes again of why the patient discontinued the study. And the reasons I like to take so many notes is because, first of all, these comments need to be reported in the monitoring visit report, and that saves me time. But second of all, it might be that the sponsor or my study manager asked me, Maria, do you know why patient 106 has discontinued the study? And I simply have to go into my tracker, look at my note, and the information is there. I also like to keep track of what was the latest visit that the patient did. And the vital information this data gives me is because I know that at my last monitoring visit, patient number 8 was performing visit number 6. That means that by now, when I'm going on my next monitoring visit, I will have 2 visits for this patient to monitor. So I can roughly have an idea of how much data has been generated that I have to monitor. And what you've just seen for site 100, you can do exactly the same and replicate for your 2 other sites so that you keep under control the site staff, the documentation, the patients, and your quantity of monitoring visits. I hope that sharing with you this tracker and how I keep under control my sites and my studies is serving you as inspiration to create your own tracker. This file I shared with you is an example of the checklist that we're constantly generating for the CRA's members of the CRA Connect community. If you want to access this tracker and many other checklists that we have for the community, you can simply become a member of the CRA Connect community. Thank you for watching. Bye!